It's always entertaining, though a little disheartening, to hear people push for big government. Between the gross overreach of federal and local government in the course of last year and the almost impressive mishandling of public health policy in states like California, New York, and New Jersey, you'd think people would have realized that politicians should be given as little power as feasible for a functioning country, not more. But unfortunately, a lot of the people voting these days make about as much sense as a screen door on a submarine. So today, I bring you 3 examples of Democrats doing utterly absurd things in hopes that those who need it will be fully informed of the incompetence of the narcissists that they want in power. First, an update on those Texas House Democrats who, when faced with overwhelming odds and little hope of overcoming, proudly and bravely rose up to the occasion by running away, fleeing Austin in order to prevent a quorum on an election integrity bill so they could avoid doing their jobs. It's enough to put a tear in the Founding Fathers' eyes. A 6th one of those Texas representatives has now tested positive for COVID-19. So has a Pelosi staffer who ushered them around the Capitol last week. Maybe Trump supporters weren't the most dangerous political activists to breach the Capitol after all. Additionally, a White House staffer who, along with the Pelosi staffer, attended a reception with Texas Democrats, also contracted COVID. Now, these are the same people who are urging face masks on the rest of us while not wearing them themselves. But then they're also urging the Senate Democrats to kill the filibuster so that a minority can't thwart the will of the majority. So I assume that irony is totally lost on them. Meanwhile, Fox News reported that more than 10% of their traveling party has tested positive, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki tried very hard to change the subject before finally admitting that other White House staffers had also tested positive, making this a super spreader event of something other than hypocrisy.
More than 10% of the traveling party with these Texas Democrats now claim to have a breakthrough case. Is there any concern that this trip that was intended to advocate for voting rights is now a super spreader event in Washington?
Well, I would say that's not a characterization we're making from here. We certainly understand there will be breakthrough cases.
Now that COVID-19, after contact with those Democrats, has reached the White House, what is your message to these Texas Democrats?
Our message continues to be thanks for standing up for voting rights and the rights of Americans to have their voices heard at the voting booth, and we appreciate their efforts in that regard.
Fortunately, the 2 D.C. staffers were both vaccinated, so they're showing only mild symptoms. But I love the way an Axios reporter phrased it. It shows how even vaccinated people can still contract and potentially, unknowingly, transmit the virus, even at the highest levels at the nation's government. Wait, you mean being at the highest levels of government doesn't give you superpowers that make you better than ordinary humans? Someone needs to tell all the other Democrats in Washington. Joe Concha of the Hill summed up the runaway Democrats' excellent adventure perfectly. It's the biggest disaster of a trip since the SS Minnow, except in this case, they're all Gilligans. Fail number 2. The California State Board of Education has decided to postpone the implementation of a new social justice-oriented math curriculum for 10 months. This supposedly social justice-oriented curriculum rejects the idea of some people having natural gifts for math, would end advanced courses such as AP Calculus, and it would make teachers use math class to promote socio-political conscience and social and environmental issues. In math class. Seems like information better suited for Getting Dumber for Dummies book somewhere. The postponement came after the board received massive backlash from critics who said that the new curriculum would politicize math in a potentially disastrous way. It would block gifted kids from rising to positions such as engineer, where they could get rockets into the sky and build bridges properly. And it would uproot long-proven effective math methods in an attempt to build a mathless, brave new world on a foundation of unsound ideology. Of course, to the people pushing it, that's their mission statement in life. Judging from so-called progressive ideas about economics, I've got a feeling most of them are still nursing a grudge about getting Fs in math. And finally, you know how President Biden wants all government agencies to go to 100% electric vehicles and then force all Americans to do the same? Well, the Democrat-led city of Philadelphia led the way in 2016. They bought a fleet of 25 electric Proterra buses. But if you're waiting for one of those buses, better brace yourself for a long wait. The City Transit Authority, SEPTA, has already removed the entire fleet from service due to, quote, structural and logistical problems, end quote. In other words, the batteries didn't hold a charge long enough for the bus routes, and the batteries were so heavy they were cracking the bus's chassis. Now, the city paid $24 million for the electric buses, partly subsidized by a $2.6 million federal grant, which means your tax money got to help those folks in Philadelphia. But the taxpayers got stuck with some of the bill. By the way, get used to that feeling. The buses were introduced when they were rolled out into the 2016 DNC convention with the boast the city was plugging into an emissions-free future. Well, they should have known better than to believe that anything that came out of a Democratic convention was going to lead to a better future or less hot, noxious gas. So remember, next time you ask for a bigger government to make your decisions for you because you can't afford that pint of Ben & Jerry's communist cherry-flavored ice cream, the people you want in power are no more competent than you are. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll like this video, and be sure to comment if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel below and clicking the notification bell. That helps a lot in getting our videos viewed by even more people. And why don't you join me for a live Q&A tomorrow? You can click the link in the description to get a notification when we're going live. If you want more of my news analysis and commentary, be sure to sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It's delivered to your email inbox twice daily. And by the way, it is 100% free. Believe it, it really is. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.